I delved into the haunted Appalachian Trail, uncovering unbelievable whispers from the dead. I never should have opened that door. That door at the end of the corridor, the one I'd always avoided. It was a normal day. I was hiking, just me and nature. The air crisp. The trees stood tall, thick enough to block out the sun. But as soon as I crossed that threshold, the atmosphere shifted. The chill hit like a slap. Darkness swallowed everything up. The whispers started. Muffled voices, echoing. Were they calling to me? I could see shadows moving in the corner of my eye. My heart raced. The ground beneath me felt alive, pulsing. I squinted into the gloom. Each step forward was reluctant. The wood creaked, a warning, I told myself. It smelled earthy, the dampness hung heavy in the air. Out of nowhere, I heard a rustling. Was that a branch snapping? A quick gasp escaped my lips. A cold sweat trickled down my back. I wasn't alone. I could feel someone or something watching me. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see nothing, but the shadows were thicker, almost tangible, curling around the corners. Then it happened. A door slammed shut somewhere behind me. I jumped, my breath caught in my throat. Panic surged through me. I turned around, adrenaline giving me a jolt. Did I just see a figure dart away, or was my mind playing tricks? The air was thick with tension. I was frozen. I needed to leave, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Another whisper. This one clearer. It sent chills racing down my spine. My pulse quickened. I took a step back, but instead of retreating, my hands pushed against the door that had opened. It swung wide with an ominous creak. What awaited me on the other side? The screaming could begin at any moment. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door, creaking open like a maw ready to swallow me whole, revealed a narrow hallway shrouded in darkness. The whispers intensified, enveloping me in an eerie chant that made my skin crawl. I squinted into the gloom, my breath hitching with every pulsing shadow flitting just beyond my line of sight. The air thickened, no longer just damp but cloying, laden with the unmistakable stench of decay. Stepping into the corridor, I noticed the walls seemed to pulse, as if they were breathing. A cold breeze brushed against my cheek, chilling me to the bone, leaving behind an unsettling feeling that I was being scrutinized by unseen eyes. I took a deeper breath, trying to steady my racing heart, but the atmosphere felt charged, electric with an underlying dread. The whispers shifted, coalescing into a name that hung in the air like a taunting echo, Elena. Each time it rolled off the tongues of the lost, it sent me spiraling deeper into confusion. Who was Elena? I realized I no longer felt like a mere observer. Something was trying to draw me in. A painted wooden frame hung askew on the far wall, the glass shattered, the image beneath it unrecognizable. I felt compelled to approach, as if it held the secrets of those who had tread this same path long before me. But the shadows began to swirl faster, zipping back and forth with urgency. I could hear their frantic whispers rising in volume, a cacophony of despair that stirred my instincts to flee. Then, nearly 3 feet from the shattered frame, something on the floor caught my eye. It was a scrap of fabric gray and frayed, ensconced in dust but unmistakably human. It draped like a forgotten cloak, the remnants of someone's last moments. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the frayed edge. Each touch seemed to awaken a memory buried in the shadows around me, bringing forth a visceral fear that grew like an avalanche within me. Suddenly, the ground trembled, releasing a low groan of wood and stone. The shadows surged forward, wild and unrestrained, and for a moment, I felt their cold breath at my neck. Panic gripped my throat as I jerked back, wrenching my gaze from the fabric. But there was no escape, something was tethering me here, the whispers crescendoing into a furious symphony that convulsed the very air around me. "Get out, leave, don't stay here," came a voice, sharper than the others, slicing through the chaos. I spun around, desperate to find the source, but only shadows met my gaze. Resolved to flee, I bolted down the corridor, each step a battle against a potent force trying to hold me back. The walls closed in, constricting around me with an unnerving intimacy. As I reached the end, a door loomed, faintly illuminated through an otherworldly glow. I slammed my hand against the surface, desperate to escape this unholy labyrinth. Just as the door swung open, a figure slipped into the light, a woman, pallid and ethereal, her features distorted by sorrow. The very essence of her anguish shone through like a beacon overshadowed by dread. "Help me," she rasped, her voice a hollow whisper. Before I could respond, the shadows surged with ferocity, enveloping her. Her lips parted in a silent cry, and in that moment, the air shifted. The ground beneath me buckled, and I was plunged into an abyss of darkness, falling into an echo that swallowed the last of her plea. I landed hard, disoriented, the whispers now devolving into a manic chorus. From the depths of a consuming blackness, those same chilling words returned, clearer and blood-curdling, "You'll never leave." The chill crept back, the sensation of being watched wrapping around me like tendrils sprouting from the very ground. My heart thundered in my chest as the shadows began to gather once more, clustering around me like prey closing in on its meal. And in the faint flicker of the dim light now looming above, I could see the shapeless forms creeping closer, hungry, awaiting their next feast. Before I could even grasp my bearings, the light flickered, and a voice, the unmistakable one from before, echoed through the corridor. Louder and clearer than before, "Elena wants you." Then everything went dark. I awoke sprawled on the ground, a faint stench of damp earth and something metallic permeating the air. My hands pressed against the cold floor, and I fought to steady my breathing. Where was I? The last thing I remembered was that haunting voice, a warning, perhaps. I struggled to sit up, clusters of shadows morphing around me, their movements fluid and erratic like oil on water. The oppressive darkness clung to my skin, while the whispers still rippled around me, weaving a tapestry of despair that reverberated in my bones. "Elena wants you." The phrase looped insistently, as if I were caught within some insidious song trapped in an endless cycle. Rubbing my eyes to shake off the remnants of the fall, I squinted into the abyss. Gradually, ghostly shapes began to coalesce. There was a feeling in the air, a rush of emotions that darted through the shadows: fear, agony, anger, and an all-consuming loneliness. They were trapped, I could sense it. A fragment of those tortured souls clung to me, grabbing my heart like the grip of a vice. Then, as my vision adjusted, I noticed intricately woven symbols etched into the ground around me, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. The air thickened as I crawled forward, compelled by a need to understand their meaning. Each was unfamiliar yet felt intimately connected to the sense of dread surrounding me. Suddenly, a raspy voice pierced through the ominous whispers, clearer than the cacophony surrounding me. "Find her. Do not let the others keep you." I spun around, breath hitching, convinced the dreamlike horrors were converging. But there was only silence, the shadows bordering on quiescent while the symbols pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. I needed to move. I pushed myself to my feet, each shaky step drawing me closer to the door I had seen earlier. If there was something Samianito rescue, I had to press on. Unrelenting whispers spurred me, urging me to act against my own fear. With a trembling hand, I pushed against the faintly glowing door. The moment the wood met my palm, it swung open, releasing a gust of chilling air that filled my senses with the odor of rot and despair. I stepped through. The light inside was surreal, a dreamlike glow cast by an absence of color, illuminating the walls adorned with photographs of faces that appeared never to smile. They stared at me with wide, lifeless eyes, as if each captured moment sought to ensnare me within their frame. I desperately averted my gaze, feeling their judgment weigh upon me. "Help me," a voice whimpered. It was faint yet intimate, the kind of plea an aching heart emits when hope is all but lost. I followed it deeper into the room, my heart beating faster, the air thickening with each step. The more I moved, the more that sorrowful call filled my spirit, blanketing me with an inexplicable sadness that threatened to consume me whole. Finally, I stumbled upon a crumbling altar, the remnants of what once must have been vibrant artifacts: a broken doll, a tattered diary, and a lone withered flower. Upon the altar lay a small, cracked mirror, its surface marred and barely reflecting the dim light. With an intense urgency, I reached out, desperate to know what lay behind its surface, yearning to peer into the depths of this otherworldly horror. Just then, the whispers crescendoed into a disorienting whirlwind, pulling at my consciousness. "Do you want to see?" they taunted. Heart racing, I drew closer to the mirror, the air thickening with tension. My reflection began to shift as though the glass held a mind of its own, becoming muddled with shapes and faces, swirling into an image of a girl whose features bore resemblance to the woman from before. The girl's mouth moved, forming words I could not hear, yet I could feel her pain seeping through the glass. Then, the world exploded into darkness once more. The shadows surged forward, a sweeping tidal wave that melted around me, pressing against my skin, threatening to drag me under. As I struggled against their suffocating grip, an insistent voice broke through the din, clearer than it had ever been. "Elena needs you here." She has been waiting. Before I could process the implications, the mirror shattered, and I was left standing alone with shards of glass raining down like sharp, cold tears. I turned to flee, but the shadows enveloped me, their cries transforming into a gut-wrenching chorus surrounding me entirely. I was trapped in their whirlwind, deeper than before, but then, a hand soft yet impossibly cold wrapped around my wrist, pulling me harshly back towards the darkness. I gazed down, dread pooling in my stomach. As the shadows closed in, the last thing I saw was a young girl's terrified face reflecting back at me from a shard of glass, mouthing the words, "You don't know what you've done," and then the light vanished, and I was gone. The world returned in a piecemeal fashion, and the horror of existence clutched at my throat as I forced myself to breathe through the bile rising in my mouth. I awoke again, this time flat on my back, staring up at a canopy of twisted branches, their gnarled fingers reaching toward the sky like the desperate hands of the departed. For a moment, I thought I was still lost in a dream, but the sharp chill coursing through my veins quickly shattered that illusion. The landscape stretched wide and desolate, an unsettling twilight draping the world in shades of decay and despair. It felt as if I had been jettisoned from the suffocating shadows of the other room into an endless twilight, where the only sounds were the rustling leaves and a distant, mournful wail that echoed through the trees. Instinctively, I scrambled to my feet, clutching fresh splintered wood beneath my nails, a frantic reminder of where I had just stood. As I took my first unsteady steps along a narrow, overgrown path, blood rushed in my ears. I could still hear the echoes of the girl haunting me, her ghostly voice cloaked in the humidity of the air. "You don't know what you've done." The words slid through my mind like ice. I continued down the trail, the trees leaning in closer, their branches forming a cathedral of shadows. A sense of being watched crept along my spine like a spider, forcing me to glance over my shoulder more than once. The forest whispered secrets, old and twisted tales of those who had lost their way, and though I could not make out the exact words, I felt their malevolence thrumming beneath the surface of the earth. Each step drew me deeper into their murmurs, wrapping around my heart as tightly as a noose. Just when I thought I might find a fork in the path that led me away from the impending doom, the wailing grew louder, a symphony of anguish rising like fog around me. Panic surged through me, driving me to run, but the landscape twisted beneath my feet. The ground felt treacherous, shifting inexplicably while roots snaked up to grasp at my ankles like the dead reaching for life. "Help me." The voice pierced through my thoughts, chilling me further. It was clearer, frantic, rising above the dissonance of whispered sorrows. "You have to help her." The urgency in the plea made my heart race. Was it another soul in peril, or the same girl I had seen in the mirror? "Where?" I shouted back, though I knew no one could hear. My voice trembled against the walls of trees, swallowed whole by the wilderness. Hope clawed at my insides, mixed with the understanding that in this place, nothing felt safe. I stumbled forward, drawn by that desperate call. The wailing morphed into a chorus, each entity vying for my attention, clawing for me to acknowledge their pain. Long-buried memories surged forth, filling my head with faces I didn't recognize but felt unbearably familiar, faces twisted by sorrow and despair, faces melting into shadows before my very eyes. One gaze lingered, piercing in its intensity, the girl's face reflecting back at me, more vivid and familiar than before, a glimmer of recognition igniting a flicker of dread. Suddenly, as if pulled by an unseen force, I found myself standing before a clearing. In the middle lay a stagnant pool of water surrounded by strange stones covered in ancient inscriptions. The air shimmered above the water's surface, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. The pleas morphed into a chant, the voices swirling together, we must go back, compelled by a force I did not understand. I approached the edge of the pool, peering into its murky depths. Shadows danced beneath the surface, writhing like worms, a sinuous ballet of despair and anger. And then, in the still water, I caught a glimpse of someone trapped underneath, fighting desperately to break free. The girl's face emerged, more desperate than I had ever seen it, now distorted with fear. "You must help me," she cried, the desperation igniting something deep within me. My heart pounded as I reached out toward the water, the rippling surface pulling me closer. As my fingers broke the surface, the shadows writhed more violently, their whispers transforming into anguished screams. "No! You'll never escape. Join us." Before I could withdraw, the waters surged. Cold hands, clammy and unfeeling, wrapped around my wrists, dragging me down into the depths. I gasped, fighting against the relentless grip, as the world above dimmed. The girl's eyes widened in terror as I struggled, but her cries became muffled by the crushing void surrounding me. And then, just as I sank beneath the turmoil, I heard it again, clearer and more menacing than before, the voice commanding, "Elena is awaiting you. It's time to join her." Blackness enveloped me once more, the cold grip tightening around my heart as I succumbed to the suffocating darkness. In the very last flicker of consciousness, a haunting thought pulsated through my mind. I had come to save someone, but perhaps I was the one who needed saving all along. The spectral grasp released me with an abruptness that sent me shooting back into a world of splendor and dread. I gasped for air, my lungs ablaze, flailing against unyielding ground beneath me, and for a moment, I thought I had resurfaced. But the earth quaked with a low rumble, and as my heart thundered in my chest, I realized I hadn't awakened in safety, that I lay on my side, surrounded by cold, gnarled roots that coiled like serpents around my limbs. The forest held its breath, its silence amplifying my panic. I forced my heavy eyes open, and the pale twilight that filled the clearing shifted like a breath held too long. Shadows danced, swirling at the edges of my vision, and a weight pressed on my chest, a warning from somewhere deep within the earth. Not far from where I lay, flickering shapes darted in and out of existence, skimming along the edge of my consciousness. Whispers, unmistakable yet ungraspable, fluttered around me like moths to flame. Each word that emanated from those darkness-tinged forms held an ancient quality, a sickly sweet reminder that I was intruding in hallowed territory. My mind is frayed, but I could decipher the common syllables among the chaos. "Help, join us," forgotten that I heaved myself up, the cacophony of my breaths mingling with that sorrowful chant. Ignoring my pounding heart, I stumbled toward the source of those haunting calls, the very stones surrounding the pool pulsing beneath my fingertips. They felt alive, each carved tale a memoir of despair woven with the fates of lost souls. "Don't let her down." A voice, sharp and urgent, snagged at the fragments of my soul. I whirled around to see the girl once more, her face an echo of faded beauty but now marred with horror. She floated a mere breath above the ground, eyes wide with desperation, pleading with a silence that crashed into me like thunder. I tried, I breathed, fumbling over my words as if they were a foreign language. Her gaze spoke volumes, her lips forming words I could not hear, wrapped in a fog of dread that swirled around us. Without offering clarity, she gestured to the pool, the water mirroring her anguish as it shimmered unsettlingly. I used every drop of courage to approach it again, to look deeper this time, knowing I might find a corrupt reflection of my own soul hidden within those depths. Edging closer, the surface rippled, morphing as unsettling images emerged. Faces, thousands of them flashed before me, each one trapped in a cycle of torment and pleading no more pitiful than Elena's. They were remnants of the forest's dark past, victims woven into the very fabric of the earth, and yet, I saw features I recognized, twisted versions of my own friends, my family, all staring back at me with eyes that begged for liberation from their eternal prison. Suddenly, Elena's figure darted behind them, urging me forward with a frantic wave. I stepped closer, but the pool surged, denying access, keeping me outside the sanctuary of salvation. A wicked laugh echoed from no direction, not quite human yet compelling enough to make me recoil. "Foolish little girl," it rasped, coiling inside my mind with icy tendrils. "What makes you think your spirit could ever save them? They belong to me now, forever are they ours." The shadows thickened, swirling into grotesque shapes of yore. They twisted and clawed, reaching out toward me with both familiarity and venom. Old stories, wrong tales, were whispered into my ear, brushing against my skin like fingers dancing across flesh, demanding my attention. "No!" I cried, raising my hands to shield my face. "I won't join you," but the shadows laughed, an amalgamation of grief that twisted my very words. "Join us. Join your kin." Their fingers outstretched further, curling around my wrist. As they pulled me into the depths of oblivion, each agonizing cry of the lost souls pierced through my armor of defiance. No. I gasped, pulling backward with every ounce of my being. "I want." But the ground beneath me quaked violently, roots and branches tearing from the ground, forming a twisted maw that devoured any sense of sanctuary. They clawed at my ankles, forcing me down, while Elena screeched in my mindest shriek of determination piercing through the chaos. Yet before I could recoil or respond, I heard the unmistakable sound of a heartbeat. The pulse of the forest mingled with my own, growing louder until it was all I could hear, an ominous rhythm that surrounded me. In that haunting moment, I realized that maybe there could be no escape, no salvation for me or for Elena. Only the whispers of the unforgotten, and the suffocating awareness that the next heartbeat could be my last and that the pull to join them might now hold the price of my humanity. With a final desperate scream, I turned to face the shrouded figures as the world fractured around me. "I refuse." My words echoed into the darkness, threatening to drown under the weight of the encroaching shadows, but as they surged forth, I knew I was teetering on the edge, no longer certain where I ended and the darkness began. And then, as if to answer my silent plea for salvation, a deafening roar erupted, shaking the very ground beneath my feet. The figures froze, the earth quivered, and an immense form broke through the shadows, setting our destinies on a collision course where one thing remained certain: no matter the outcome, the darkness would not let me go without a fight. The ground convulsed, and the shadows recoiled as the colossal form rose, a dark silhouette against the twilight whirlwind that surrounded me. It towered with an otherworldly presence, its features indistinct and swirling like a thick fog, a kingdom of shadows birthed from despair. The faces trapped within the water's depths appeared strained and terrified, eyes widening in recognition of whatever this monstrous being was, as if they were all bound by an ancient pact. "Foolish child," it boomed, the voice resonating with the weight of 1,000 tormented souls. "Your defiance has awakened what you dared not summon." The shadows quivered in sync, surrounding me like a tide about to recede but holding me imprisoned in its grasp. With my heart hammering, I dared to take a step back, but the ground beneath me had morphed, shifting like liquid. The roots tightened around my legs, twisting, pulling, anchoring me further into this dark embrace. I could feel the pulse of the forest mirrored in that heartbeat, binding me to this haunted realm. Elena's ghostly form flickered beside me, her haunted eyes pleading for me to resist, to break free from this grasp of despair. "This is our only chance," she whispered, but her words were spirals of air lost to the roar of the apparition. That I found myself unable to comprehend what was happening, the fear bubbling in my throat like poison. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation seeping into every syllable. My voice felt insignificant against the presence that loomed before me. In response, the shadowed entity loomed impossibly closer, its voice vibrating the very fabric of my being. "You, child of the living, are entwined amongst the broken threads of your own fate. To escape, you must choose. Abandon your kin and let their cries become the chorus of my power, or join their wretched fate, entangled and forever forgotten, the agonized faces faded in and out, me friends and family, writhing in anguish just beyond the surface, and with each wave, I could feel their past lives surging through me. The remnants of our shared laughter transformed into haunting cries that echoed within my very bones. "You cannot have them!" I screamed, tearing my gaze away from their suffering. The entity grinned, a disconcerting upturn of its dark features that felt inherently wrong, twisting hope into malice. "It matters not, their time draws nigh," it hissed. "The forest craves blood. Your blood. Without the embrace of the forgotten, the cycle of sacrifice will be unbroken." As terror coiled tighter around my heart, I felt a flicker of resolve ignite deep within me. "I will not let you win." I felt the warmth of anger as it surged through me like a wildfire. "I'll fight you. I'd rather face oblivion than become another pawn in your wretched game." The entity's laughter enveloped me like a winter wind, chilling me to the bone. "So be it. Your spirit will waver, and I will relish the taste of your failure." In a sudden, brutal movement, it lunged forward, reaching out with shadowy tendrils that snapped like whips. I recoiled, actively forcing my legs to pull me back, desperate to escape its grasp. The roar of the heartbeats engulfed me, yet beneath their ominous rhythm, a new sound began to resonate, a distant and melodic song that cut through the chaos, growing ever closer. And then, in the very heart of the forest, the trees twisted back, forming a corridor that led away from the chaos. The beckoning notes grew louder, intertwining with the whispers that had haunted me from the start. "Join us, join us." The melodic chant bore an unearthly quality, mingled with sweet sorrow. Suddenly, within that corridor, a figure emerged, an ethereal silhouette, illuminated against the vivid shadows. It was a graceful woman, adorned with leaves and flowers that whispered against her skin. She stretched out her hand toward me, her face serene yet filled with sorrow. "Come, leave the darkness behind. There is still hope, we can free them together." Time slowed as I stood caught between two forces, one of lament and despair, the other of promise and salvation. Elena's face shifted into a ghostly shadow, caught in my peripheral vision as she cried out for me to stay. The shadows writhed, threatening to snatch me back, while the specter before me promised liberation and safety from the torment I now faced. That I could feel the forest's heartbeat thrumming through the corridor, echoing my own in a desperate rhythm. The moment teetered on the edge of decision, and with it came an overwhelming dread. If I chose the figure and breached the darkness, would I truly save my loved ones, or would I fall deeper into a fate worse than death? And as I reached toward the spectral figure, the ground beneath me roared in fury. The shadows recoiled, and the pulse of the earth gave way to a deafening silence. Then, slowly but insidiously, the very ground erupted, roots and limbs breaking free, launching me into the air as the trees trembled. "Choose." The entity howled, and before I could respond, the darkness surged, pulling me in a direction I couldn't comprehend. The corridor of light pulsed, beckoning me, while the shadows clawed fiercely at my ankles. I could feel every heartbeat, every tear, every whispered plea as they all clamored to be heard. One last scream escaped my lips as I was thrust into the unknown, the world fracturing around me, leaving behind only the chilling certainty that my choice had begun a chain reaction of horrors yet to come. The darkness fragmented like a shattered mirror reflecting a world gone awry. I fell through the void, disoriented and gasping, the shadows clinging. As I landed, the air ignited with an acrid smell of decay, my body crashing onto cold, unyielding earth. Dread seeped into my bones, heavy and relentless, as I pushed myself upright. That I found myself in a cavernous space, lit faintly by phosphorescent fungi that clung to the damp walls, illuminating grotesque murals of past sacrifices, faces contorted in agony, blood flowing like streams into a gaping maw. The ground was littered with remnants of offerings, broken ceremonial masks, shattered bones, and the faded remnants of something once human. Echoes of despair reverberated around me, a distant wailing that seemed to crawl into my mind, gnawing at my sanity. "Welcome," a voice rasped, hollow and strangled, seeming to emanate from the very stone. I turned, heart hammering, and there stood a figure draped in tattered remains of cloth, its form melding into the shadows like a wraith emerging from sorrow. It eyed me with vacant sackets of void that threatened to consume everything I held dear. Do you understand what you're a part of? It hissed, stepping closer, and with each movement, I noticed strange markings on its skin that pulsed like a heartbeat, synchronized with the cacophonous whispers surrounding me. You are in the belly of the forest, where time and fate intertwined. I recoiled, pressing against the wall, my heart pounding like a war drum. I don't belong here. I shouted, desperately seeking an escape as the shadows writhed with a life of their own, creeping ever closer, hissing threats that circled my thoughts in a merciless dance. But you do, the creature said, a sickly smirk stretching across its gnarled face. You've come to claim what has been lost, yet you cannot escape the past. The forest is alive, and it remembers. It knows your pain and the blood that shall spill to assuage its hunger. The guttural laughter of the shadows unfurled, suffusing the caverns with a chill that penetrated my soul. I felt the presence of the powerless, the lives eternally bound by regret, relentlessly pulling at the threads of my consciousness. Images flooded my mind: Alina's terrified face, the expressions of my family, drawn, stricken, all gazing at me with a mixture of dread and expectation. What must I do? I croaked, barely able to summon the words above the echoes. The shadow man tilted its head, a grotesque mimicry of thoughtfulness. Embrace the darkness, child. You can end the cycle. You can become the harbinger of fate for those who dwell among the forgotten. But be warned, there will be a price. My throat tightened at the weight of its implication. What price? Your very essence, it whispered conspiratorially, reverberating through the thick air. You must shatter what remains of your humanity or have it devoured whole. Become what you fear, and the forest will yield. Before I could reply, the shadows writhed with renewed vigor, and the walls trembled as the whispers erupted into a crescendo, a desperate cacophony of names, a torrent of regrets. I stumbled back until my spine pressed against the cold stone wall, panic surging within me like wildfire. Choose. The voices wailed, merging into a singular entity with ghostly faces swirling through the darkness, each one pleading and angry, bound by anguish and desperation. Their sounds became a surge, and I felt the walls of fate begin to close in on me. Suddenly, I felt a pulling force, a cold grip on my wrist. I turned to find Elena standing beside me, her ethereal form flickering like a dying flame, agony etched into every line of her spectral face. Don't listen to them, she cried, her voice charged with the weight of 1,000,000 unshed tears. You can find another way. There's a light hidden within the darkness. We don't have to sacrifice ourselves. But then the shadows flickered, and the figure of the shadow man advanced, its form swelling ominously, blocking my only source of light. To leave, you must make a sacrifice, child. One whose weight will bring forth your salvation. Will it be your own humanity? Or the love of those you hold dear? In a sudden flash, I glimpsed peripherally the faces of those I'd loved, now twisted and forlorn, etched with regret, their ghostly iterations caught in an eternal struggle, and the shadow cavern echoed with their cries, tugging at every fiber of my being. Choose. The malevolence wrenched through the air, punctuated by a violent tremor beneath me. The ground beneath my feet began to crack wide open, revealing a cavernous abyss that seemed to scream of emptiness, the dark tendrils curling around me like a serpent preparing to strike. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down like a frigid blanket over my heart. Elena, desperate and pained, lifted her hands toward me, imploring me with all the love she had yet to relinquish. We can fight it together. Don't let it consume you. As the shadow's voice crescendoed, drowning out all rational thought, I recognized the very essence of the imbalance creeping Clausera choice that rapidly swelled beyond my control. The darkness snarled expectantly, eager for my surrender. In that swirling maelstrom, my heart fluttered like moth's wings caught in a storm, and just as the precipice beckoned, I felt a sudden surge of energy welling within me. Panicking, my instincts clawed at the depths of my past, grasping for strength. I took a deep breath as shadows writhed, encircling me with intent, and found myself at a crossroads, and just before I could solidify my decision, the shadows surged toward me like a flood, and the ground exploded beneath my feet as a bone-chilling howl ripped through the air. A voice I recognized, haunting and desperate, help me. A scream shattered the silence, and from the darkness, an outstretched arm emerged, this time not a shadow, but flesh. Jack! And just then, as my heart plummeted into the depths of the chasm, I realized the entity was once again transforming, forging an insatiable hunger for more than just mean awakening of something infinitely darker yet more familiar, ready to devour. Jack! The cry reverberated through the cavern, a desperate plea that clawed at the fraying edges of my sanity. There, emerging from the churning darkness, was my brother, his skin pale and fear twisted into his features. It was an image that should have grounded me, but the shadows writhed with hungry anticipation as their call echoed like thunder in my bones, "Get away from him!" I shouted, instinctively reaching out towards Jack, my heart racing. But the shadows tightened their grip around me, hot and suffocating, as if they understood the bond that tethered us, and they worked to sever it. Jack's eyes darted, filled with an urgency that pierced through the veil of darkness. "You have to listen, please. It's a trap." His voice was tinged with a tremor that sent ripples of dread through me. "Do you think I don't know that?" I rasped, feeling the shadows close in tighter, the malevolent whispers turning into a symphony of chaos. "What are you doing here? How did you get caught in this? You should have stayed away. I was looking for you," he retorted, panic bleeding into his tone. "Elena's gone." The forest claimed her, and he shuddered, a visible tremor coursing through his body. I felt something pull me in. "I thought I could save you. But it's worse than I've ever imagined. We have to get out." Now, the Shadow Man lurked behind him, a slow, ghastly elegance to its movements. It relished our exchange, absorbing the conflicting waves of love and fear with each strained word. "You see," it said, its voice deep and echoing, a deliberate mockery. "You're bound by the ties of this world. But do you know the cost of his life?" I froze, breath hitching in my throat. "What do you want from us?" The creature's smile was sickening, a gruesome exhibition of toothy malice. "To satisfy the yearning of the forest, a sacrifice must be made. Choose your brother or your own soul. But make no mistake, child, either choice depletes the flickering light that dares oppose me. No. I screamed, my mind racing, visions of past winters spent with Jack, of laughter echoing through the halls of our childhood home, of our last skirmish where he promised to always be my protector. "I won't choose, perhaps the forest will choose for you," the Shadow Man taunted, and the ground trembled violently beneath my feet, fissures bursting forth as if the earth itself rebelled against the weight of our choices. "Jack, I won't let it take you," I called out, tears blurring my vision, fueled by desperation and dread. "Just climb down," Jack cried, desperately waving toward the abyss that had swallowed so many. My heart leapt, the cavern echoed with the spirits there, pulling at my heart, but the shadows surged, mocking every flicker of hope that dared rise. "Embrace the inevitable," they hissed, pressing closer, tendrils of darkness swirling like vipers, entrapping us in its claustrophobic grip. "Jack, run!" I shouted, attempting to push him back, but the shadows lunged, tendrils wrapping around my arms, binding me to the stone. My heart raced, and an icy wave of hopelessness crashed over me. A flicker of hesitation crossed Jack's face, but the shadows darted toward him, hungry and voracious. "You can't save me. I won't let you." In that fleeting moment, I saw the raw determination in his eyes, ignitia resolve fueled by love that hung like a tantalizing thread in the chasm of despair. "Then set me free. I won't let it take you too. I'd rather die than let it claim your soul." Wretched laughter flooded the air, filling the cavern with vile mirth as dense and dark as the surroundings. The reality of our desperation began to set in. "Choose." The figure loomed larger, and I saw flickers of faces in the shadows, the remains of those who had once walked this path, eternally lost. They stretched out their bony fingers, yearning for connection, for the futile hope of salvation. "You're my brother," I cried, shaking with the weight of our choices. "We can beat this together. We will not be bound by their darkness." But the ground shifted violently, and the abyss grew wider as the beings of lost souls began to rise, stretching toward us, echoing our anguish as they sought release from their torment. There will be no release until a choice is made. They wailed, voices merging into a cacophony of despair that riled the air around us. The shadows pressed down, and my limbs felt heavy, bound in despair's grasp. I could feel myself being pulled deeper into the chasm. If I let Jack go, would we both be lost as the forest feasted on our despair? If I sacrificed my essence, could I save him at the cost of my own existence? And just as I felt the tendrils snatch at my soul, a brilliant light pierced the darkness temporarily, a flash of daylight breaking the firmament of despair. Alina's spirit materialized, radiant and fierce, illuminating the shadows with her ethereal glow. "Hold on!" she screamed, the force of her voice cutting through the cacophony, igniting a spark of rebellion within the shadows that momentarily flinched from her brightness. "Fight!" In that instant, I felt the pull of our bond, the light slicing through the fog of dread, despair, and grief that threatened to consume me. Jack's voice called out through the distortion, a tether anchoring my soul. "Together!" But just as I began to comprehend our unity, the Shadow Man extends its gnarled hands, veins pulsing with darkness, entreating me for the inevitable choice, its grin ever widening as the abyss creaked ominously below. As I stared into Jack's eyes, the depths of the chasm yawning wide open, I realized that the choice wasn't just about freedom or sacrifice, it was about our very souls intertwining in this eternal dance of the damned. Stop! An earth-shattering roar erupted through the air, and the echoes of the forest paused, a moment of eerie silence settling over us. Then, from behind the shadow figure, something shifted, an enormous shape coiling slowly into sight, something ancient and powerful, ready to take more than it had ever demanded. Before I could process the terror of the new arrival, the tremors beneath us escalated, and the walls began to tremble violently, rumbling with an impending crescendo. I could barely regain my footing as the cavern itself seemed to pulse, as if alive, demanding blood, flesh, and identities to quench its unholy thirst. "Choose!" the voices chanted, rising in a haunting crescendo as the ground cracked wide open beneath us once more, the darkness yawning ever wider, ready to swallow the unwilling souls whole. What lurked in the shadows loomed larger than anything I had ever faced, and as Jack grasped my hand tighter, its presence became all-consuming. The echoes of the forest unleashed their fury as I teetered on the edge, grappling with the enormity of our fate, aware that my choice might plunge us all into unfathomable horror. The ground settled slightly, as if holding its breath, but the sensation was fleeting, replaced by an eerie stillness that coated the air with an invisible dread. All around us, the spirits of the lost sighed in unison, their tormented whispers weaving through the darkness, swirling around us like cold fingers brushing against our skin. Jack tightened his grip, his pulse racing as his eyes darted between the Shadow Man and the monstrous form, now fully emerging from the depths of darkness. It towered above us, a gargantuan figure, cloaked in shadows that rippled like liquid night. Its eyes glowed with a burning red light, hungry, and filled with an unfathomable malice. The scent of decay and earth mingled, filling my nostrils and constricting my throat. "Do you want to know what you'll lose?" the Shadow Man crooned, a malignant joy underlying its words. "Let me show you what lies beyond your decision." Suddenly, light shifted, and for a breathless moment, the cavern flashed with fleeting scenes of my life. Every cherished memory burned bright as the forest fed on them, pulling at the threads of my existence. I saw my wedding day, laughter threading through the air, my parents' faces during the holidays, candlelight flickering in their eyes, a simple day in the sun, running carefree across fields of wildflowers. And then, like the slashing of a blade, darkness wrapped around each image as the entity drained them, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. No. I screamed, attempting to push back against the crushing feeling creeping into my chest, but the Shadow Man only smiled, feeding off my fear. Jack's voice broke through the cacophony, filled with desperation. "Don't listen to it. We can break its hold. We have the light." But the cavern pulsed with the ancient entity's power, and I felt the connection between us fray too with every flicker of darkness that seeped into my thoughts. The ground trembled beneath us, each tremor mimicking the pounding of my heart, a warning echoing that our time was dwindling. Alina's spirit floated beside me, a beacon of defiance amidst despair, but I could see her glow wavering. "You must stand firm," she urged, her voice a thread weaving through the growing shadows. You are stronger than this creature wishes you to believe. With renewed determination, I turned to the malevolent figure and called out, "We won't be your sacrifices. You can't feed on our love." The declaration reverberated through the cavern, sparking a momentary flicker of resistance against the darkness. The shadow man hissed, the air thick with its rage. "What the forest craves, it shall claim. Your bond cannot withstand the inevitable." Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the larger form shifting restlessly as if anticipating a spectacle, its red eyes fixating with a predatory gaze. "Fight!" Jack shouted, his face twisting with concentration as he struggled against the shadows pulling at him. Together, we bolstered our resolve, igniting the light that flickered within us both. For a fleeting instant, the cavern illuminated, highlighting the grotesque faces of the lost souls eagerly clawing at the darkness, yearning to be released from their torment, rising up in silent screams, urging us to join them. But then came a monstrous roar, a sound rooted in the very core of the earth, a primal cry echoing through time and space, shaking the cavern's walls apart, and the nightmare materialized before us. It was an amalgamation of twisted limbs and spectral whispers, a titan forged from the anguish of the forest that NOTCHNG will escape my grasp. It thundered, shaking the stones, sending a shower of debris cascading down upon us. The shadows shrieked in delight, a collective roar that ripped through me like jagged shards of glass. That we stumbled back, fear swirling with desperation as we turned toward the cleft that opened near the abyss, revealing a darker void pregnant with subliminal horrors. "We can't keep this fight," Jack shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of the growing chaos. "We have to find a way to fix this." Glancing back at Elena, her ethereal visage became ghostly, almost transparent, as if the entity wished to claim her as well. "Before the hourglass empties, you must confront the master," she urged, her voice almost drowned by the rumble of the cavern and the howl of the shadows. At that moment, the monstrous figure lunged forward, an arm stretching impossibly long, reaching out to ensnare us in its ghastly hold. "You wish to defy your fate? Let's see how your light holds against the void." Its chilling voice rang, and the shadows congealed, ready to strike. "Jack!" I yelled, but the ground beneath us cracked wider, yawning like the hungry jaws of hell. The darkness swirled violently, engulfing my vision. Both of us stood at the precipice, hearts racing as we prepared to leap into the unknown, and as we jumped, the cavern erupted with a cacophony of whispered secrets, 1,000 lost voices blending into one, warning and begging as the shadows swallowed our resistance whole. I had fell into a darkness deeper than the pit I'd ever imagined, but as I plunged into that black void, I found a strange clarity enveloping me. I was still spiraling, weightless, surrounded by shadows and whispers, and yet, it was in this nothingness where the truth began to unfurl like a nocturnal bloom. As I landed harshly on a ground that felt too soft, too alive, I was immediately met with a deafening silence. The shadows dulled and thickened, pulsing around me, but in that void, clearer than anything before, I realized something profound. The darkness was not my enemy. It was the vilified protector of an ancient power, something that fed off fear and despair, but also craved a reckoning. "Join us," the echoes cooed, seductive and serene. I fought the instinct to tremble, realizing that the probing forms weren't just terrifying shades but remnants, echoes of lost souls entwined with my own fears and regrets. I could see their faces now, shimmering in and out of focus. Me family, friends, faces twisted with suffering, but familiar nonetheless. It was then, a flash of light erupted within me. I wasn't merely facing a curse from the forest, I bore its burden. I had succumbed to the darkness inside me that begged for an escape. "Jack!" I bellowed into the silence, hoping against hope he could hear my call. The moment my voice echoed back was a chilling reminder. I was in a realm without boundaries, and time was a cruel mistress here. The shadows thickened, swirling around me, going deeper as the anguished cries of countless souls buoyed my resolve. They were trapped, not just by the forest but by their beliefs in chains woven from futility. Panic surged as a realization gripped me with icy fingers. I had brought them to this fate. My curiosity, my hubris in seeking the truth behind the whispers, had carved paths into their despair. And now, I had become one with their sorrow, an unwilling conduit to the horror that bound us. "Face it." A voice crackled through the obsidian darkness, and I turned to see the Shadow Man taking shape again, his grin sickeningly wide. Your connection to them is your undoing. Embrace your fate, relinquish your essence. No. I screamed, resisting the malevolent call as shadows danced at my feet, closing in, eager to pull me into their abyss. I won't surrender to you. But it was hard to fight when my very spirit felt frayed at the seams, tethered to the hauntings of my past. Suddenly, Jack appeared from nowhere, his countenance shifting through the smoky darkness. Sister. You have to fight. We are stronger together. The sight of him sparked something faint embers of hope lit within me. I had to make him see, together, we were more than just the weight of our shared sorrow. Jack, the shadows want to divide us. I gasped, reaching for him. We can confront the darkness, we can end this whatever holds us here. But the shadows flared, and the figure of the shadow man peered with hatred. Foolish children, it growled, your bonds will not save you. The forest thrives on blood and sacrifice. Will you choose to join them or sacrifice one to gain your freedom? The air thickened with tension. Jack's brow furrowed, his resolve faltering as he looked into the very darkness that had nearly consumed me. The shadows closed in tighter, the ghostly tendrils whispering temptations, taunting my every thought. An entity of despair loomed larger, caressing the air with its oppressive presence. There was nowhere to run, that we can't let it separate us. Jack shouted above the chaos, stretching his hand toward mine. I grasped it fiercely. As we instinctively tightened our hold, a shock coursed through my veins, a bolt of raw energy surged between us. In that singular moment, something shifted. Together, I breathed, letting the power emanate through our linked hands, and in an act of desperate faith, we focused on the ethereal glow that flickered within our bond. We are the light. We reject your darkness, the shadow man howled, piercing through the cacophony, as the light surged from our entwined souls, blooming like wildfire. The grotesque faces of the lost souls multiplied, cascading in a storm around us. They whispered words of encouragement, flanking our resolve, pushing the darkness back in waves. That I am not afraid of you. I shouted, as golden light began to fill the cavern, radiating from deep within like an untamed inferno. Unraveling the shadows, I could feel the warmth of all those I loved igniting the fire we conjured, a beauty born from suffering, and all at once, the abyss imploded, the cavern erupted, a devastating crash of sound and light, as blinding luminescence expanded outward, engulfing everything before it. I held tight to Jack, knowing our shared strength couldn't be extinguished. As the shadows recoiled, screeching in terror, I realized, we were the authors of our fate, and with that understanding, we could eclipse even the deepest night. But as the light began to swallow the shadows, I felt a rift splitting beneath us, an echo of the forest's relentless hunger countered by our bright assertion. Suddenly, the shadow man's face twisted into an inhuman mask of fury. You may have undone me, but it does not end here. Its voice crescendoed, reverberating with spite. With that, the ground began to quake violently. Just as I thought we had found victory, a gaping maw opened beneath us, a dark void crumbling at our feet, and then came the gut-wrenching truth: I hadn't defeated the evil. I could feel it twisting even now, bending the boundaries of fate. As darkness thrashed, I realized it was a lure into another cycle, a promise of rebirth, a chance to continue tormenting those who ventured here. No, the promise of forever weighed heavily on me, pulling at my soul. I grasped Jack's hand tighter, attempting to pull him back, but as shadows surged, they reached for him to fight. I screamed, terror coursing through me like fire, but the more I struggled, the more profound their reach became. Elena's figure flickered nearby, desperation evident upon her misty visage. You can't let it take you. Remember the warmth. Remember the bond. Jack, hold on. I shouted, and together we mustered the strength of our memories, each shared laugh, each moment shared amid sunlight, laughter, and our dreams. Together, we fight. But even as I focused regarding him, brother, my kin, the abyss consumed, the light flickering just beyond, and the shadows wrapped around him, dragging him into the estimated chasm. No. My heart shattered, and as the darkness swarmed over and consumed him whole, I heard him whisper into the void, I will always be with you, fight for us, please. Suddenly, the ground quaked violently, and in that singular moment of heartbreak, I could feel that once vibrant connection between us shattering like glass. As everything crumbled and spiraled around me, the last flicker of Jack's warmth dissipated, and darkness embraced me, its hollow laughter echoing through the void of despair, and as I fell, I understood. Not all tales have heroes, not all could overcome the darkness. In the end, I might be forever bound to this cursed forest, but Jack would become a shadow lurking forever, another wraith among the lost. As the blackness swallowed me whole, I felt echoes of my very soul breaking and bending, molding into the very thing I had fought against. A wave of sorrow washed over me, that I was not just entering eternal despair, but becoming its essence. For every soul drained, there was an insatiable hunger, an eternal curse woven into every heartbeat. And just before the darkness embraced me fully, a single thought clawed its way to the surface, as heart-wrenching as it was devastating. I am Elena now, and as the last vestiges of light faded, the haunting realization wrapped itself around me: a real cycle had begun.